And welcome back to Magic Dragon Comic Review, coming to you live from Seattle, Washington, with our New Year's special. 2 days before New Year's, but hey, it is what it is. Welcome down, and we will be jumping into some interesting stuff today. Gentlemen, what are you doing for New Year's this year?
I think I'm working.
A friend of mine from Kent Station in Washington has invited me over. She does a kind of an art gallery slash art studio, and it's been great just being able to hang out with her and various other people on Thursdays art nights. That's what I'm doing. Are you doing anything special, Doc?
I'm doing what we do every year, which is eat fondue at 7 and bed by 9 and really well rested for the new year.
Sounds safe and not psychotic like some other people might do.
So what you're saying is Alex is the only one doing something cool.
It's been a long time since I went out for amateur night. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's jump in. We are doing Spider-Man 2099. I believe it's 1 through 5, right?
1 through 4.
That's what I said. 1 through 5 or 4. Sorry. Ooh.
Yeah. It's okay. So Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse came out recently. Alex and I saw it and attempted to do a review, which I think we spent more time talking about other things. No, this movie was absolutely amazing, so I thought it'd be appropriate to follow up with the Spider-Man book. And the one thing that I thought was painfully missing from the movie was Spider-Man 2099. And he got a really cool cameo at the end, but that's hopefully just means we're getting more of him in the next one. Have you seen Spider-Man Spider-Verse yet, Doc?
I don't want to.
What?
Yeah.
The movie's awesome.
Sorry.
Okay. Is there a reason why?
There is. Because so multiverse is really cool when it comes to having the variety of things, but the minute multiverses start crossing over, it gives me the Flash PTSD, and I don't like the Flash because of his OP, and then the affecting of different multiverses and blah 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 blah. And that's what this reminded me of. So I don't even want to see it because I choose not to believe that multiverses can talk to each other, though they exist.
Okay. Well, in this case, the Spider-Man 2099 was originally billed as the future of the Marvel Universe. Whether or not they actually get there is up to different writers, but it is treated as its own separate continuity. It was a publishing imprint from back in the 90s where it was kind of a cyberpunk version of the Marvel Universe. And it focuses on this guy named Miguel O'Hara, who's half Irish and half Mexican. And he is... I knew it. And he basically was working for a corporation called Alchemax, and working on a project to recreate superheroes. And when a corporate competitor decides to basically get back at him for being insulted, overloads the equipment while he is inside of it, attempts to murder him using his own experimental process, and instead gives him the powers that never worked on anybody else. And it kind of just goes downhill from there. And it's basically was created to be exactly the opposite of everything Spider-Man is in a lot of ways. And it's also by Peter David, a famous novelist who I think this was one of his first forays in the comics, and not too shabby, if I may say. Well, Alex, Doc, what do you guys think of the book?
So there was definitely aspects that I really liked. Knowing about the 90s version of the comics that were coming out during that time gave me a certain insight of like what was going on in this book. So I thought it was a really interesting part of like talk about how the choices of the past actually had a part on this future or this present, where, for example, like you've talked about before, Woody, of when the Secret Invasion happened within Marvel, there should have been like more cause and effect. And I felt like
in camps and stuff.
Well, that are just like more cause and effect of like these choices from the past have had an effect on the future, opposed to like it was just a posted note of an idea and somebody didn't go forward with the story or the concept. Whereas in here, you have the heroes of yesteryear, or like our current present, were you know, have become idealized, have become these legendary things. Like, I love the religion of Thor.
Yes.
And I thought that was a nice nod to basically have this aspect of the past of you had this Avenger that, you know, came to Earth, this god, and people were kind of worshiping him to a certain regard in all the other Asgardians. And I know that going a little off topic on like the main part of the comic, but it's part of the background that really makes this book interesting to me, at least. As
it's actually one of my favorite parts in it, that aspect of it. You know, because he was real to those people. So why not? Why wouldn't people start worshiping him?
Yeah, and I thought there was some very interesting nods of like what was going on, not only from previous books and just kind of reviewing some of those books from the 90s that we have done and just on my own. So it's like I knew a little bit of tidbits from here and there. And then because of some of the other titles that were also the 2099 series, you have Doctor Doom make a cameo. Yeah. And he had a title book that was also part of this series.
Well, that was being billed as the first major comic series starring a villain. And it was actually in the regular comics line, Doctor Doom had disappeared. And this is supposed to be where he went. So this is actually the real Doctor Doom. And though I don't remember how it is he got back into the past without, you know, bringing the technology with him, though, because that would have been a problem. But, you know, it's supposed to be the real Doctor Doom.
But as other aspects of this book, I thought the art definitely had a very kind of 90s feel, as it doesn't use a lot of gradients within the coloration, but the colors do pop. There is this kind of very late 80s, kind of very 90s kind of feel to it, of just the way that comics were done and stylized. And as story, as kind of like briefly mentioned about like cause and effect, you know, I thought it was a pretty good kind of a Batman Beyond in the respects of, so you had Batman the Animated Series, and then eventually there was Batman Beyond. And for the people that either watch that or have read the books based off of that, it's a kind of similar story of, here was the original hero, he did his part, years or decades later go on by, and now you have a new hero that takes on the mantle or the concept, but yet isn't the same as that original person. So instead of having Peter Parker and that concept of with great power comes great responsibility, I love the fact that he uses a line of like, with great power comes like great worry or disappointment or something else. It was just like
guilt.
Yeah. And I just love that fact of, you know, like it kind of tells the mindset of this character, how there's some similarities to Peter Parker of like very intelligent person, you know, the kind of mindset, but the things that this individual does in comparison to Peter Parker are very different because the time period's different, the morals, the ethics, and the way that the character has evolved.
I like he had the holographic assistant, and then they have that scene where it turns out she has different personalities available, and like the fourth one she goes to is basically Aunt May. And he looks at the reader like, "Are you kidding me?" And then, hey Doc, I think you should chime in.
I think you guys have got this. Why do you need me?
Because you're here and we love you. Man.
I will tell you.
Go for it.
I looked into it. So The Simpsons came out in 1987, and Matt Groening is a time traveler, and he's predicted a bunch of stuff using The Simpsons. and I'm just wondering why they didn't get him, because he's been working on Simpsons for 5 years at that point in 1992 when they created this comic book. They're like, just come in and hey, do a prediction on the Marvel Universe. It's really funny to me. I was looking through some stuff outside of reading the comic. Did you guys ever see they did a textless cover for 2099 #1 in like 2014. So they just redid a cover that's textless. It doesn't say Spider-Man 99 and all that. It's gorgeous. I just looked it up. I don't have it on pictures and going through here. But as for this comic, the ones that we read, first off, I'll tell you right off the bat, the nostalgia effect that I got of like having explanations for things in the dialogue between people, like and usually something like that, I'm like I usually groan at, but I thought it was pretty cool to give that kind of jump back, because this is 92. They kind of were starting to sway away from that in most comic books at this point, where they gave that little head nod in the first comic book, which I thought was kind of funny. It's not like here's a description in an organic conversation. It was like the guy driving the flying vehicle is like, my vehicle can't handle the things and wind and blah, and I was like, wow. There's a good nod there. The art in this is really cool. I love the reimagined Spider-Man outfit. And I will say I really did enjoy this comic because they didn't just rehash Spider-Man, what you guys were talking about. It was very unique, even though it had similarities. And so there's some stuff that keep you going, to have that Spider-Man feel, like he has all the regular stuff. I love the touch back to the original Spider-Man with the little arm webbing cape thing. And in this one, I think I might have read a little ahead, so spoilers alert on this one, but I like how he uses it to maneuver fly.
Oh yeah. No, that's gliding. Like he doesn't rely on the webbing nearly as much as Peter did.
Right, and that I like the fact that his it's not an outfit per se. It's like molecules that are bound together that create it. Is actually really cool.
Well,
I gotta say, it's
actually something that was invented by Reed Richards for the Fantastic Four. The unstable molecules, because that way they could have uniforms that Johnny Storm wouldn't burn up and would stretch to match his stretching abilities, and could turn invisible and so forth.
Well, and I think that's a really smart part of there's tons of lore within like Marvel, and the amount of creativity that they've had within the multiple decades that they've been doing superheroes, and the fact that somebody was able to like take these various pieces from the past to make a new story, I think once again goes into my point of like that cause and effect, and that just really smart storytelling. Because I mean, it's like, there's these great things in the universe that a lot of times just feel come up flat, within some of the stories that we have reviewed. But this is like a perfect example of, this technology exists. And like one of those arguments of, like you've said before, Woody, of you got Reed Richards, you got Tony Stark, you got all these other brilliant scientists. Like with all those individuals, you got super science that could just advance humans to this great level, and yet only like a select few, almost this just us kind of individuals can use it, but the rest of humanity, the rest of society just like falters and stays behind and doesn't advance.
Wait, are we talking about Spider-Man, or are we doing Black Panther now?
I'm hitting a little bit of maybe both that, and also making fun of DC too.
Well, that's interesting too, because like if just an indestructible fabric, the unstable molecules fabric, right? That alone could fund the entire Fantastic Four operation, and they never commercialize it, right? And I was listening to another channel talk about a DC graphic novel, and one of the plot points in it was that there was like this scientist guy who was coming after the Justice League because they're hoarding teleportation technology and not sharing it with the world. And it's like they use it, but they don't let anybody else have it. And it's just it's like all of this technology should
Yeah, but the
be
Justice
transforming
people
society.
knew that. But the Justice people knew that they were making clones of themselves and destroying the previous clones when they were doing the
Right.
teleportation.
Yes.
So one thing
they're actually protecting us.
One thing I read, and I don't know if they got in these comics because I only read the first 5, and I don't remember. He has venom, right?
Venom?
Yeah, he actually has like
teeth?
teeth venom.
I only read the first 5 as well. It hasn't got that far yet, but it does imply that he may have other abilities.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm not sure yet. The thing is, when this series first came out, I don't think I read past issue 10, and I always regretted that. Like, looking back, I wish I'd kept reading, and I don't remember why I stopped. Actually, it wasn't that I wasn't enjoying the comic. I think there may have been some other thing, but I had picked up the whole series actually on sale for Christmas. They had a Christmas deal, so like I've got the entire 40-issue run of the original series. So, you okay there, Doc? You're turning red.
Don't worry about me.
Okay.
I'm fat. I turn red if I move a pencil. I'll sweat if I stand up.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm sure I will find out in short order. But I've certainly been enjoying it more the second time around. I think, this is one of those books that was a bit too sophisticated for the readership at the time, because there's a lot going on and a lot of subtext and a lot of detail, and there's a lot more to it than I really appreciated back when I first read it in the early 90s. I think I can definitely see why the character has, of all the alternate Spider-Men, he's probably has some of the most enduring popularity. And I personally really was hoping that this guy would get a movie at some point. I think the MCU may eventually make one if they're able to keep going with their partnership with Sony, which Alex and I talked about in our Spider-Verse review. You should totally check it out on the channel.
You guys should.
Shameless plug.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did like one aspect though, and I don't know if this keeps going, but it seems like he doesn't have that Spidey sense that Peter Parker
he doesn't
had.
at all.
Yeah, and I really like it because it gives him that. It's they add into these superheroes these things that cause because they'll write them into something they can't get out of, so they have to create something to get them out of it, kind of thing.
Yeah. Sure.
And I really like that they didn't do that, and I hope they continue doing that. Like, he does not have that extra perceptual sense that something bad's going to happen.
Well, it actually makes sense, because what he was basically trying to do was, this guy in the original science project, he knew Spider-Man was this hero, and he knew what the power set was because it was well documented. So the question was how do you develop those abilities in somebody, right? And so he had built claws into the fingers that could be used for climbing, enhanced strength and reflexes. So there's that. Gave the guy advanced vision and night vision, and apparently, but it's like I like that he didn't know the full extent of what he was dicking around with, because it's like he was completely caught by surprise by the fact that he can't see during the day, even though he clearly expected the night vision and the day vision. When he got the powers, he didn't know he was going to be able to have really bad day vision. And he also, apparently, even though he was the creator of this whole project, didn't know he had spinnerets. He either didn't think it was going to happen, or that was an X factor that came in because he may have been actually using spider DNA. I don't know. But I thought that was an interesting point. Like, shouldn't he have known he had web spinners, but biological web shooters? And so,
wait, does he have biologic? I thought he had the external one.
He does. No. He has these glands in his arms that you can see if he lifts his arms up. So he probably won't be going out without a T-shirt too many times. But there's glands are in his arms, and it shoots something from the forearm, and it's muscle controlled.
Oh, that's right. And, yeah. But he did have the thingy too.
What
he
thingy?
had the Peter Parker apparatus.
The wrist-mounted web shooter.
It might be something I was looking through. It might come up later on, but yeah, at some point he will have that. I don't mean to give you guys spoilers. It was when I was doing my thing. It talked about. It was a little paragraph, a blurb somewhere that talked about how he had the organic, but something when he first started, like he was using the regular apparatus because he didn't know he had it.
That's not true. I just read that part of the comic book, and he never had the web shooter. Somebody may have. Like Wikipedia. If you're using Wikipedia, they're not always right.
No,
so,
I don't use Wikipedia. Anybody can change that.
Yeah. I don't know. where that like if that's true or not, but I know that in the first 4 or 5 issues, the first 5 issues, he does not use web shooters, and he doesn't need them.
Oh, I wish he did.
And
I thought it would be funny, like, to have that and then accidentally trigger the other one. Never mind.
Well, I thought it was interesting that somebody grabbed his arm and he just prematurely shot a web blast on the ground, and he couldn't control.
You know, and sometimes it happens. It happens to everybody.
Yeah. But and it's also interesting that, I mean, so far he doesn't have the same level of ability, because like Peter's web shooters can pretty much do anything, and he could shoot a web line, and he was able to shoot a sticky glob on the floor, but like he doesn't seem to be. It's like his powers are just as capable, but he does different things, and I like that he's not. It's not the same power set. Like, he does have advanced senses, and it's comparable enough to spider sense, but he doesn't like have the full-on danger sense. Like, you could get him from behind, and he wouldn't know you were there.
Well, it seemed like he could see far away.
He could, and he probably has I think he has really good peripheral vision as well. Like his response time is really amazing. So it's like probably the whole world is like it's going in slow motion to him. I would imagine, and because he has no combat training whatsoever at all.
Right.
He's just getting by on the fact of high reflexes and super strength.
But anyways, I digress. The art in this comic book it's not unique, but it is original. I really did like it on that aspect. It was, again, a new concept using old features, which I don't understand why people try to reinvent the wheel, which I thought was beautifully done. It's so if you like art, I checked this out. I'm not saying go and grab it as a collector's. It wasn't like art that blew me away, but it was cool to see that combination of new ideas done in an old form kind of thing. I didn't see anything wrong with the lettering. Again, you catch those more than most of us. I
saw a few things.
I did like the special,
but it's obviously hand lettered, so you know there are going to be more mistakes.
And then the sound sound effects kind of in it. Those were pretty. I like those because some of those I could really hear, especially like when they were shooting the lasers and it would say thumb thumb. Like, it was really well set up where it was in the box.
True. The
story is, I like the story, but that's because I don't know what the story really is yet. If that makes sense to anybody, it's so open. It doesn't have like a ton of stuff. You're not getting blown away by like a million things. It's not trying to set up for you to understand everything in the world. It's giving enough for you to be like, this is really cool. What's happening?
Well, it's very much the origin story, and then it just begins to get into his actual adventures. And it's early enough in his adventures that it doesn't quite have the handle on what all he can do. And you know, I like that you got a guy that's kind of out of his element trying to be a hero. Like, when we do superhero games, one of the things that is very common is for people to basically make a special forces character where they take every physical skill enhancement, they twink the character out. Like, this character's trained to the nines to be the ultimate warrior, and everybody does that, right? And in reality, it wouldn't be that way. You'd have characters with much more diverse skills. Some of them wouldn't even have combat training at all, and they'd rely entirely on their powers. And I actually think it's more interesting when you have a character like that, because he's got more flaws, and you know, he's imperfect and more vulnerable, and I love that in a character.
No, I agree. But we gotta start cleaning up. So go ahead, Woody. I'm sorry.
Well, did anyone read any of the billboards in there? Because there was one that said "Say no to plugs."
Oh yeah. Next to the one where it was Stark's like sports vehicle that was right above it. Yeah. I thought there was some interesting like background stuff. If like you took a look between, if you've read anything else Marvel, or even watched like some of the the comics made movies or cartoons, like I started noticing things where it's like, oh, okay, I know about this because I've seen it in a cartoon or seen certain aspects from movies and such. And it was just neat to like have these like little Easter eggs.
Yeah, I liked the one where they had the billboard talking about like, you know, be part of the corporations, be part of the future kind of thing, and it was Core, CORP as in, you know, core, right? But they put they turned it into corpse, and and somebody was up there trying to clean the E off the billboard.
That's pretty funny.
That
All
was
right.
great.
So let's start wrapping this up and final thoughts. Alex, let's start with you this time.
All right. So I thought this is a really good book. It has a good kind of futuristic feel. If you do like superheroes and kind of a cyberpunk or possible future, this is something that I would say definitely pick up. The art isn't too bad. I think they could have spent a little bit more on colors and give it a little bit more pizzazz, but for the style and everything else, not a bad one. Check it out and enjoy.
So I loved the book. It certainly would be, I'd say 8 out of 10. Well, wait, 4 out of 5 for me. As far as the color part, actually, that was actually an interesting point, because Marvel had actually picked up an indie publisher specifically to buy their color department at one point. Because they were indie public. I can't remember which company it was. It might have been Malibu, but one of the indie companies was actually doing colors that was blowing away Marvel. And like what we see in this book, it's not great. It's good enough, but it's pretty typical of what Marvel could do at the time. And so they had actually bought out a company specifically to augment and excuse me, to
carjacking.
Pick up. Yeah, I know, right? To pick up all these really edgy colorists, to augment Marvel Comics, which is where you get what you have today. So, I loved it. I'm definitely going to keep reading. I may not marathon it like I did one of the last ones, but I've got all 40 issues. I'm going to be reading to the end, and we'll find out how it ends.
I really did enjoy this, and I'm usually not a Spider-Man fan, but mostly because of all the different Spider-Verses, and I don't know who's writing into what anymore, and the advanced, super awesome, amazing neighborhood Spider-Man versus the awesome, amazing, super neighborhood genetic Spider-Man, and it gets crazy, and I can't. But anyways, I digress. This is an interesting book. I would possibly keep reading it. It's not jumping out at me, but I am kind of curious to see where it goes, because the aspects, like Alex was talking about, are so different. It's almost this brand new thing. And as far as it goes, you guys are talking about color. I'm glad they didn't. There was a very nostalgic feel about this comic book, and I think that's what made me really enjoy it. Because it had that nostalgic feel with the storytelling that's a little bit more modern for me. And those two crossing over just seemed really cool. Like, it was like a really neat mix. And I think sometimes people are afraid to go and, try something like just doing old comic books like they were before. We've done a couple digital ones where you can see the pixelations, but I would love to see an old style comic book written in a modern day story and lettering. You know what I mean? I like that. I like the color choices here. I love the way they do the buildings. Like, they look really high up, but you just know all they're doing is drawing straight lines closer and closer together. And it was amazing. I didn't catch any of the billboards. I wasn't paying that kind of attention to the background, but I would see like the buildings, because Spider-Man's way up in the air going up, and that's the angle it's looking at, so it's like right behind him. I enjoyed that part of it. I think this is a really good book. This is one of the few that I would give 2 thumbs up to, and that's not an Image comic book, believe it or not. This is my first one to go pick up and check out. It really was very interesting, and I just liked the mix. It was perfect.
Well, in response to your nostalgia comment, I thought it was interesting. There's actually a point in the book where you can tell that this book was actually recreated digitally by scanning the physical comic book, as opposed to pulling from original art sheets, because there's a point in one of the 2-page spreads where it doesn't line up, and it doesn't line up.
Did you notice the texture?
Which part?
I did not.
There was a couple of pages where you could actually see the texture of the paper.
Oh, right. Because the scanning didn't quite,
I'm not gonna lie,
wasn't as clean.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, because there's a 2-page spread where Spider-Man's doing his big poses, I think in the first issue, and the 2 parts just don't quite line up right because the printing in that issue didn't quite line up.
I did see that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a problem with my phone, actually.
No, it's not your phone, and it wasn't that there was a defect, in anything. It's because, like, it did line up. originally. It's just the printing was slightly off on that page, and that's how you can tell that they're actually scanning the comic book with this one, as opposed to to just pulling from the original art sheets or something. They may not even have them anymore, and it was probably easier just to grab the comic book from the archives.
Well, that's all the time that we got. We want you to join us back next week as we get back into the numbered episodes and we stop doing these little extras. But expect it again next year for Christmas and New Year's. We'll have 2 special episodes at that time, and next week should be really interesting. So
perhaps a special episode for 4th of July, and a special one for St. Patrick's Day, and a special one for Valentine's Day.
Hey, there's enough comic books that represent those things. We can make that work.
Yeah.
Oh no. So anyways, read more comics, keep it nerdy, and live your dreams, everybody.
Bye.